So today we've got this 1992 Fender Chorus. It's got a couple of issues. The pots are super crackly. There's also a high-pitched whine coming from it. Sounds like it might be a grounding issue as well. Today we are just going to be seeing if we can take care of those pots. So I'm going to give it a quick test, figure out where everything's at, and we'll go from there. So just getting a baseline for the knobs, seeing if any of them are sticky, seeing if there's any of them making noise right out of the gate, kind of get a baseline, and then we'll plug the cable in, plug the guitar in, see where we're at. So I wasn't expecting it to make noise since I had the volume turned down, but I did notice that while plugging it in, it seemed to be making noise whether the volume was down or not. So we're getting our bass line. As you can hear, some of the knobs are crackly. That volume knob there on channel 2 specifically was really bad. As you can hear there. So I'm just going to double check them all, make sure where we're at, and then I'll plug the guitar in, double check it, and we'll move forward. Some of these are definitely worse than others, although initially I was thinking I would focus on those. At this point I decided I'm just going to double check them all, and I'm going to clean them all, because there's no point in just cleaning the ones that are really bad if there's a chance that the other ones are going to get there soon enough. So we're going to get it unplugged. Obviously, before you work on anything, unplug it. Shouldn't have to say that, but here we are. Pull the grill. Showing these old Fenders is fairly simple. That Velcro doesn't hold super well. Checking the grill, see if it needs to be cleaned. The grill cloth, it's filthy, but not a concern at the moment. And while I know that cleaning the lint and stuff out of the front of it isn't gonna, that's not what's causing any of the issues it's having. But I try to do this anytime I've got an amp or anything apart, just because it saves you running into some trouble later from build-up. In this case, this amp probably hadn't been cleaned since it was manufactured in '92. So figured we'd get in there, get all that stuff out. The back wasn't nearly as dirty, but it was dirty enough. So I decided we'd get in there and get all that cleaned out as well. From here, we're going to double check, make sure we know where everything goes, get an eyeball on everything, make sure we can get everything back where it came from. I'm going to unplug the speakers directly at the speaker. I'm going to grab a pair of pliers because this is pretty tight. And then we're going to unplug it from the stereo plug in the bottom of the amp, and then we can move forward, taking the screws out and getting this chassis out. And here I'm just taking note of the stereo plug in the bottom, the orientation where the left and the right were, so I can make sure I get them back in the right spot. Having the whiteboard as a work surface comes super in handy for things like that. So for this particular chassis, we have 4 screws in the top of the amp and then 1 in either side, all screwed directly into the chassis. So I'm going to pull the top ones out and then brace the bottom of the amp as I'm pulling the side ones out to make sure it doesn't fall. As it turns out, that wasn't really necessary, as this thing was super tight in the housing. It was getting bound up on the grounding tape and on the Tolex on the inside, so I'll go back and fix that where it caught, but I actually ended up tearing the Tolex a little bit there, so I'll fix that. Here is the chassis pulled out. It's actually surprisingly clean. I mean, there's not a lot of space for stuff to get in. On the back of the pots here, there's this little notch out in the top of them. That's where we're going to be spraying our cleaner. It will be able to drain out the bottom as we go, but that's where we want to get our cleaner in. I'm just using a contact cleaner that's safe for circuitry. It's like $8 from Napa. It's typically used for cars, but it's an electrical contact cleaner. It's safe for circuitry and all your delicate electronics. And I'm just going to spray some into that little notch, spin the knob around to make sure it gets worked in there. I'll do that 2 or 3 times on each knob to make sure that it gets in there all the way through. Cleans that contact plate under the knob. I essentially just spray it and twist the knob until I feel the resistance on the knob become less. It's the difference between an old amp and a new amp. When it's done, you can feel the difference in how the knob turns. A couple of problematic ones down here that were especially sticky, and that was the volume in the overdrive. From here, I'm moving on to the input jacks, because line 1 was particularly bad. It didn't work at all when I got the amp in. Line 2 worked all right, but it was a little touchy. So I'm just getting in there with a Q-tip, cleaning out all of the heavy dust that I can find in there. And then I will get in there with the contact cleaner as well and make sure that I've got as much of the grime out of that jack as possible. And here I would normally go in the back and clean the jack from the top. This is the first amp I've come across that had a completely closed input jack, and it was both of them are completely closed. There was no way to access it from the back without taking them apart, and I wasn't interested in doing that, so I just went in the front with the Q-tip, got as much as I could reach in there, not pushing hard, just enough to, if there's dust or dirt on there, get that out of the way, so when I spray the contact cleaner, you can get any additional grime out. And there wasn't a lot of dirt and grime that came out of either of them. I was actually a little concerned about that. I was worried that there might be a different issue causing that jack to not work. But I figured move forward with cleaning it, and if that doesn't solve the problem, then we'll look at possibly replacing that jack. So they're all cleaned up. I'm going to go through, give every knob another couple of twists, make sure there's nothing sticky. And then we are ready to prep the cab to put that back. So as I said, I put that contact, or the grounding foil, the foil tape back in place where it had moved. And then I grabbed some super glue to repair that Tolex where it tore. The clamps weren't doing a particularly good job of holding it in place, so I ended up grabbing some electrical tape just to hold that Tolex down while the glue dried, and that did the trick. And then it's time to put the chassis back in, see how everything's working. This was every bit as difficult to get back in as it was to get out. It's very tight. It was trying to catch on the same spots of Tolex and on that aluminum tape, metal tape. I was able to get it back in, get everything lined up, throw the screws back in it, make sure everything's lined up before I put the screws back in, just because that saves a little bit of time if one of them doesn't line up. And now it's just time to plug back in, test it, and make sure those pots are clean. In the event that you've got one or two that are still crackly or still dirty, at that point you just repeat the process, go back in and clean it. That is why I will typically do 2, 3, sometimes even 4 passes on the contact cleaner, is just because I don't want to have to take the amp apart again, so I just do my best to do a thorough cleaning the first time. As you can hear now, the crackling is gone. That solved the crackling. At this point, I had almost forgotten that's what we were doing. I was just so irritated by the hiss. So I'm glad that seemed to solve the problem. At least the problem of the pots being dirty and crackly. That problem is solved. So next one to tackle is going to be the hissing. We're going to see if we can't figure out what's going on there. Possibly do something with the plug. It looks like the original 3-prong outlet plug was replaced at some point. So I'll go over that, make sure everything looks good there. And yeah, so for now, we solved what we were hoping to solve. And next is going to be addressing the hum. And that one will be in the next video for this amp. So thank you for coming along. Stick around, subscribe if you want to get notified when those next ones come out. If you give it a like, I appreciate it. If that's too much work, I completely understand. Otherwise, I've been Connor. This has been an old Fender. Ooh, if anybody can tell me why touching the positive line on the speakers there made that whistle happen, let me know in the comments, because I'm not sure what's going on there. But yeah, we got the pots clean. It sounds better. It's not good yet. We'll get to good. But for now, it's better. And that's step 1. So get out there, make something, film something, fix something. Figure out how something works. And we'll see you in the next one.